ನೋಡ್ದಾ?
New post abilities. Dear participants, good morning to all of you once again, and welcome all to the first session of this short-term course on disaster management. And for this session, we have with us Professor A.G. Dev-Prasad sir as a resource person. Dr. A.G. Dev-Prasad sir is a former professor of Department of Studies in Environmental Science, University of Mysore. He has to put in more than 30 plus years of teaching, research, and administrative experience to his credit. In fact, he obtained his master's in botany from Carnatic Institute, Dharwad, PG diploma in environmental planning from Institute of Mysore, PhD in applied botany from Institute of Mysore, and another master's MSc in sustainable development from Sikkim Manipal University. He has been awarded several awards for his contribution to the field of environmental science in particular and higher education in general, like International Suvarna Parisara Ratna Award, Indira Priyadarshini Best Scientist Award, and Best Faculty Award, etc. Under the evidence of Professor A.G. Dev-Prasad sir, 20 students obtained their degree, 15 students obtained their degree, and he published more than 100 plus research papers in peer-reviewed journals of national and international importance, and equally presented papers in various national and international level conferences, seminars, workshops, etc. His area of specialization is conservation biology, cytogenetics, tree breeding, tissue culture, and phytochemistry, and even waste management and bioremediation. He also conducted more than 60 conferences, seminars, etc., and also attended the equal number of programs. And he also published 2 books in the area of environmental science. He also served in the administration as a chairman of the Department of Studies in environmental science, and is a member of many associations related to environmental science in various universities. With this brief, I welcome wholeheartedly Professor A.G. Devaprasad sir to this online lecture session on behalf of all the participants through online and also on behalf of the MNPTC Center and East of Mysore. Over to Devaprasad sir.
Well, good afternoon, dear teacher friends. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Nanjan Swami and the Director of Academic Staff College for having invited the opportunity today to share a few aspects related to the concept of disaster management. So let me give you a brief introduction about the concept of disaster management. So you will get a basic idea as to what are the disasters and what are the plans and methods for disaster management and all these things. So, okay, if there is any questions and clarifications, you can interact with me at the fag end of the lecture. So let me look at my first slide. So we know that disaster is not for the benefit of any individual or for any living entity. One minute, I will share the PPT. You can now start. 1 minute. Again. Okay. So, ಇದು ಬರ್ತಿಲ್ಲಮ್ಮ ಲೈನ್ ಬರ್ತಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಅಡ್ಡ
ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೊತ್ತಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗುತ್ತೆ
ಹೋಗುತ್ತಾ ಓಕೆ 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 ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು So let me tell you about the concept of disaster management. The primary question is that what is disaster? What is the meaning of a disaster? We know that a disaster is nothing but any catastrophe that leads to the destruction of the human life or to the property or damage to the environment. So that is what very precisely we can say a disaster. That means it is a calamity or a mishap that is going to occur in any area. So either it may be natural or it may be man-made. Either it may be natural or it may be man-made. Sometimes even because of the negligence on the part of the human activities, it may result in the damage to the property to an untold amount, to a greater extent. So destruction of the property or degradation of the environment or loss of human life or a greatest effect on the human sufferings, including the health hazards. So any such events that is going to be resulted because of the man-made or natural calamities, we call it as a disaster. So very precisely, they are going to define it as a catastrophe, mishap or calamity or a grave occurrence affecting any area from either natural or man-made causes or by accident or negligence. So ultimately, all these things will result into, as I told you, in the loss of human life or human suffering or damage to the property or degradation to the environment. So to what extent this disaster is going to be resulted? It is going to occur such an extent that it will be beyond the capacity of the human population in the affected area to withstand it. So that is how a disaster is going to be defined. The term is derived from a French word, désastre, meaning a bad or an evil star. So it is a sudden accident or a natural catastrophe that causes a greater damage to the life activities. So according to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, so it is the definition of disaster is that any occurrence that has resulted in property damage, deaths, and or injuries to a community is called a disaster. So that is the definition given by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Now, any occurrence that causes damage or ecological disruption, that means the normal activities in a given environment, if at all it is going to be affected, it is called the ecological disruption. It is due to both living and non-living entities. So we know that the living and non-living entities in any unit area will form the ecosystem, and they will be always interacting. There will be a relationship between the living and the non-living entities. The delicate or intricate relationship that exists between the living and non-living entities is in order to carry out the function of an ecosystem normally. But any such disaster, if at all is going to take place, any disaster for that matter, if at all takes place, it may affect either the non-living world or the living world. So thereby an ecological balance between the structure and the functioning of the ecosystem is going to be lost. So anything that is going to disrupt this ecological disruption may also be referred to as a disaster. And of course, the deterioration of the health and the loss of human life, not with one or two deaths. So thousands and thousands of death or the affecting of the health hazard is there, then it is referred to as the disaster. So anything that is going to affect all these things or causes all these things, and which will warrant an extraordinary response. That means when any such thing takes place, it requires the urgent attention from the community outside the local area, the area wherever it is affected. So other than that area, from outside, it requires an urgent and an immediate attention by the individuals or the institutions versus type of community. So that is what is referred to as even the disaster. Okay. So even the warrant will be to that extent that if nobody is going to respond, at least it will be what? Giving an warrant signal to the WHO to see that how this disaster is going to cause the loss of human life. Now, there is, when disasters takes place, or before taking place, or even during when it takes place, or even after disaster has taken place, how to manage with these disaster processes. So disaster management is the process as to how we prepare for, how we respond to, and how we learn from the effects of these major failures of the previous disasters. So based on all these, what we can say, knowledge and experiences, we will be taking certain measures as to when any area which is prone for disaster, how to meet the mitigation measures of the disaster, or in spite of that, if it takes place, what are the further steps that we should look into or attend to immediately to see that there should not be too much of loss of human life or the property or anything else as such. Then after that, if any, that is the individuals, whether it is living within both plants, animals, including human beings, whenever they are going to be affected, what were the post-disaster steps that should be taken? So all these things are going to be integrated in the disaster management. So in other words, the disaster management basically is aimed at the efficient management of the resources. Efficient management of the resources. These resources include air resources, water resources, mineral resources, forest resources, wildlife resources. So all these resources, how we can manage these resources in that given area where the area is prone for disaster, or the area where disaster has taken place, or even after disaster has taken place, what should be the post measures to be adopted. So that will be the responsibility. So how to manage the efficient occurrence or existence or the conservation or protection of the resources, and what should be the responsibilities in lessening the impact of these disasters. So these things are involved in disaster management. So disaster management in simple words is nothing but a process in which we prepare and respond and learn from our past experiences or effects or studies. So as to how to manage our resources being kept in stock should be available without getting depleted, and it should be available for the present and the future generations, and any eventualities that take place that has taken place should have a least possible damage, right? So that aspect what we look in is nothing but the disaster management. Now there are various types of disasters. Very broadly, the disasters can be caused, right, can be classified, isn't it? Is classified into three types: natural disasters, man-made disasters, and technological disasters. As the term itself indicates, natural disasters means the one which occur very naturally in nature, like volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, avalanches, cyclones, etc. So they are very natural. So they are called natural disasters. There are disasters which are man-made disasters because of the activities of the humankind. So the disaster may be resulted. Say for example, pollution, right? Or say for example, in biowarfare, they are going to release the pathogenic microorganisms or pathogenic organisms into the environment, that is man-made. So they are all man-made disasters. So by the activities of man, sometimes even in the technological field, so there may be a disaster. There may be a leakage of a gas, for example, methyl isocyanate gas that has been released in Bhopal gas tragedy. So that is a technological hazard. So thus, a disaster may be a natural one or a man-made one, or it may be a technological one. So the technological hazard is also sometimes referred to as hybrid disasters. Hybrid disasters, because it involves the activities of the human beings. In all these types of disasters, who is going to be affected? It is the community, it is the people, it is a population of plants, animals, including human beings, who are going to be exposed. And especially with respect to human beings, so the human beings are going to be more vulnerable whenever a disaster has taken place. So based on what are the factors that are going to influence or going to affect the exposure and vulnerable of a community, the disasters are going to be categorized into various kinds. Now, natural disaster. A natural disaster, generally we do not expect as to when, though they may predict it, it is an unforeseen occurrence, isn't it? So that may cause, that may affect the humans or the community. So there are many natural disasters that may damage the environment and the people who are living in it. As I gave you the example, for example, floods, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, landslides, earthquake, avalanches, all these things are considered to be the natural disasters. Natural disasters. So whenever these disasters takes place, natural disasters, there will be a greater loss of the property, nature, human life, the health hazards, economy, social living, all these things are going to be affected. Now, according to International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, some international organizations, so natural disasters are nothing but which are naturally occurring, and it is a physical phenomenon. It is an external phenomenon that we can visualize, that we can see it, and it is always caused by either rapid or a slow onset of events, and that will be having an impact on the human health. Basically, whenever a disaster has taken place, say for example, whenever an earthquake is going to be resulted, lot of dust particulate matters. So everything, landslides, many things may take place. So it disturbs the environment. So the people are being suffocated for what? Getting cleaner air. Cleaner air, for example, it may affect the human health. The respiratory tracts, respiratory diseases may be resulted. And if the disaster is severe, even it may lead to the death of the individuals. So that is referred to as the secondary impact. Primary impact is how it is going to affect the human health. And the secondary effect is if it is going to be remaining for a long period, right? If it is very much chronic, then it may also result in the death of the individuals. Now, these disasters may be once again categorized into various types based on. So, geophysical disasters, wherein within the what? Our earth, right, due to the various factors in the earth, so we may get earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, volcanic activities, because of the in the earth, they say because the movement of these tectonic plates resulting in a fault and all these things, a geologist can explain better as to what is an earthquake, what is a landslide, and all these things. But they are considered those disasters which occur due to volcanic activities or earthquakes, landslides, etc. They are referred to as the geophysical disaster. And if the disasters is due to the flooding of water, right, excess, so floods, it. So whenever there is excessive rain, right, when all the rivers, oceans are going to be what, reaching their maximum limits of what we can say capacity, or sudden fall of snow, ice balls, etc., along with the wind storm, so it results in avalanches. And climatological disasters, for example, extreme temperature, either high temperature or low temperature. So both the temperatures are going to affect the what? Human health or the loss of human life. So such disasters are referred to as climatological disasters. The wildfires, which will be spreading from one area to another area for kilometers together, so which may result in the loss of the wildlife, the plant life, the animal life, all these things. So such type of disasters are said to be climatological disaster. And sometimes the waves, for example, hurricanes, cyclones, wherein the wind velocity will be more than 115 kilometer per hour. More than 115 kilometer per hour is the speed of the wind velocity. And you cannot predict in which direction the wind is blowing and which direction it will go. So all of a sudden it may be resulted. So such type of disasters are referred to as meteorological disasters. Then the last kind is said to be the biological disasters. So biological disasters are the one which is going to be resulted because of the epidemics, sudden outbreak of a disease due to the living entities, disease causing living entities like microorganisms. The one which cause the disease, they are called pathogenic microorganisms. Pathogenic microorganisms. So they are going to be resulted. For example, we know that during earlier days, plague, malaria, smallpox, chickenpox. So all these are all considered to be the epidemics, right? Now, what is the difference between, I would like to tell you here one word, epidemics and pandemics. Epidemics means any disease that is going to be, that is resulted due to these pathogenic organisms in a local area. So in a local area to a greater extent, to a greater population, if the disease is going to be spreading, it is called epidemic. But if it is the same thing which is going to be spreading across the globe, if it is a global phenomenon, for example, corona, Corona has started from one country, it started entering to another country, like that it has become a global phenomenon. So it is said to be, this is an epidemic, but it is said to be pandemic. It is said to be pandemic. So that is the difference between epidemic and pandemic diseases. Okay. Now, these are all due to the living entities or the microorganisms or the pathogens. So, which is going to result in all these things. So, likewise, any such disease, even animal plagues, right? When animals are going to be affected with the viral diseases, it will spread from one individual to another individual, one individual to another individuals. So, these disasters are said to be the biological disasters. Now, if you consider man-made disasters, all right. So, these disasters normally occur in such areas wherein the activities of the human beings are nearer the human settlements. For example, establishment of industries, and if any disaster has taken place in such industries wherein the human settlements will be there, then it leads to that type of disaster you call it as man-made disaster. So, even they are also referred to as environmental or technological emergencies. So, it may include environmental degradation. So, either because of the deforestation or because of the release of toxic substances into the environment or due to pollution, and sometimes it's also due to the accidents. So, for example, if a furnace is going to be blasted, something technological disasters in the industries or transportation or usage of the hazardous materials, and when the hazardous materials are going to be met with an accident, so it may start either catching up the fire. So there are so many such type of things due to man-made activities resulted, and such disasters are said to be the man-made disasters or environmental or technological emergencies. Okay. Now, disasters, right, are also classified into, for example, water and climate disasters. If a flood, hailstorms, cloud burst. Cloud burst means we knowing, but still I will tell you, that is, normally we know that rainfall results in any geographical area during various pre-monsoon, monsoon, post-monsoon period. We know that rainfall is taking place. But all of a sudden in area, if there is a heavy rainfall, all of a sudden if there is a heavy rainfall, that means in an hour at least a minimum of 4 inches of rainfall takes place. 4 inches of rainfall take place in any locality, then it is said to be a cloud burst. It is referred to as a cloud burst. So that means cloud burst is nothing but all of a sudden occurrence of precipitation or rainfall to a so it sorry, there is some interruption disturbance. 1 minute about that. You are not seeing any slide, you know.
Sir, sir,
Hello, am I audible?
ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
1 minute. There is disruption in the slide. It is loading. 1 minute. I will call them. Here there is some technical problem.
ಒಂದ್ಸಲ ಸರ್ ಈಗ ತೆಕ್ಕೊಟ್ಟವ್ರನ್ನ
ಇದಂಗೆ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಹೋಯ್ತು. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay. Okay, now I told you. Likewise, geological disaster, landslides, earthquakes, tornadoes. Tornadoes means in Kannada you call it as suntragali, right? So swirling of the air along with the dust and other things with a rapid speed. So you call it as tornadoes. So they are also referred to as geological disaster. And the occurrence of diseases and spreading of the diseases from one area to another area, from one population to another population on a macro scale, right? You call it as the biological disaster. So it may be due to the pests, various pests that may affect even the agricultural crops, you know it. So farmers are going to suffer sometimes with a greater loss of the crops or the yield because of the pest attacks and locusts. Locust plagues means these grasshoppers. There are insects which belong to this grasshoppers community. They are the major destroyers of the crops sometimes. So they spread from, because they multiply rapidly and they also keep on eating, right? Bits and pieces, and they may also result in the loss of crops. So likewise, cattle epidemics, for example, you might have heard reindeer pest. Even in the forest areas we come across such type of diseases. So that means once these diseases occur, it spreads rapidly to a greater population, affecting their health or life. So such type of disasters we refer it as biological disaster. Then industrial disaster. So in the industries, either due to the release of toxic substances or organic vapors or chemicals, or sometimes even due to accidents or oil spillage, and fires that occurs incidentally or accidentally. So all these things are going to result in affecting the human beings. So they are referred to as the industrial disaster. Nuclear disasters. So especially the radioactivity, exposure to radiations, and nuclear activities, nuclear weapons manufacturing, blasting, so many things. So any such because nuclear activities involve the usage of the radioactive isotopes, which are emanating various dangerous radiations, which may affect the human beings. Sometimes may bring about sudden and heritable change in the human beings, which we call mutations. So that mutations may not be beneficial, right? So it may lead to various types of cancers. So they may be having carcinogenic effect. So that is how nuclear disasters may be resulted. And urban and forest fires. So even in a dry deciduous forest during summer, if anybody smokes and threw away the cigarettes or beedies or something else without carefully tending their cigars and beedies, so the fire may spread to the entire forest area, taking away the loss of biodiversity in that particular area. So forest fires may be also a man-made disaster. Oil spillage of the oil during the extraction or excavation of the oil or oil drilling, etc. Even in the oceans, it leads to marine pollution. So many marine organisms may be affected to a greater extent. So all these things, right, are called man-made disaster. Okay. Now, regarding the collapse of huge building structures in metro cities, we have seen, okay, 24 stories to 30 stories complex. If there is by chance a slight tectonic plate movements, if at all is going to be resulted, everything come to the dust. So such disasters are said to be the man-made disasters. Then hybrid disasters, which are also referred to as complex emergencies. So these disasters actually result due to the multiple activities. It is a combination of both natural and man-made disasters. Natural and man-made disaster. Say for example, if there is an earthquake, it is a natural disaster. So that itself will be having, if the depending upon, so to what extent this earthquake has resulted. So you know that richer scale, on the richer scale, if it is 4, 4.2 and 5 like that, if it exceeds 6, 7 like that, a greater magnitude of such earthquakes will bring about definitely the loss of life. And added to that, if there is a huge complexes that has been multi-story buildings have been constructed, right, in such earthquake prone areas, so it is a man-made disaster. So that may be also resulted. So in other words, the integration of both natural and man-made disasters are often referred to as the hybrid disasters or complex emergencies. Okay, so such situations even may arise during the war. Then these complex emergencies, right, are going to be having certain characteristics. They are typically characterized by certain features. So what are those features by which they are being referred to as complex emergencies? That is the hybrid disasters. For example, extensive violence. There will be extensive violence will be the characteristic feature of the emergencies. Displacement of populations. So whenever something is going to be affected, naturally the population will start moving from one place to another place, or they are being shifted, right, or they have been migrated. So displacement of populations will be resulted. So that is also one of the characteristic feature of both the hybrid emergencies or hybrid disasters. Say when natural disasters take place, the people will start moving from one place to another place. And added to that, if there is a collapse of the buildings, institutions, residential areas, there will be start displacement of the population. So that is another characteristic feature of the complex emergencies. Of course, loss of life will be there in most of the disasters. And a greater damage to both societies and economies will be there. And actually, during such type of disasters, the hybrid disasters, so various agencies will come to the rescue or for support of the human beings or the human life. So there is a need for such type of attention. That is actually that is going on whenever any disaster takes place like that. So immediately the rescue operation will be done both by GOs and NGOs, including the local population. So that is the need for the people in such type of complex emergencies. And sometimes there may be political and military constraints which may impact or prevent humanitarian assistance. So, for example, whenever there is what we can say a disaster has taken place in the transition region between two states, say for example between Karnataka and Kerala, the transition region, if a disaster has taken place, then so there should be a will. Basically, one should think that we are all human beings and both are irrespective of state boundaries, both the state authorities should attend to it. Suppose they think that, oh, it is not coming, most of the area does not come under Karnataka, it comes under Kerala, or most of the thing come under Karnataka, not Kerala, like that, if there is no political will, if there is no political unanimity to meet the disaster, then that will be a constraint. It is a problem which cannot be explained. Sometimes such type of things also will happen. So by these things, what will happen that the assistance for human beings will be prevented. So, because of you do not have the willpower to help the humans, whether irrespective of the region, irrespective of the boundaries. So, if you don't have the willpower to help it, right? So, may give so many reasons. So, such type of constraints also will be there in such type of complex emergencies. And there will be always an increased security risk for humanitarian relief workers. Okay, so security. So whenever any such disaster take place, some people will definitely go to help other individuals or affected individuals. So even during daytime, night, especially during night time, it will be a greater risk for the people who are involved in rescue operation. So either in community or in volunteer capacity. Okay. So all these are the characteristics of complex emergencies. Now, pandemic emergency, as I told you, it is derived from a Greek word pandemic, means all demos. Demos means people. All people are going to be affected because of an infectious disease that is spreading from one region to another region on a large scale. So, it may be for human beings or it may be for animals. So, this is going to affect not only the health, even it leads to the economic and social loss, right? Social relationship is going to be affected, economic loss will be there. So all these things are going to be affected. The best example for pandemic emergency would be corona, right? We know that during coronavirus, the value of, at that time, what is the value of oxygen, what is the importance of environment, what is the importance of food, what is the importance of any medication, right? Medical treatment. So all these things. So it is due to it is called pandemic emergencies. And it is very unusual. Sometimes it is unexpected. You cannot expect as to how it takes place. Any infection that takes place due to a pathogenic organism will not give you a prior indication when a disaster has taken place, because we know that microorganisms multiply rapidly. A bacteria, for example, once in every 20 minutes, one will become 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 6, 8. Likewise, they multiply rapidly so that very quickly they are going to invade or infest the organisms, whether a plant or an animal or a human beings. So that is how it leads to an enormous loss of the life. So that is why it is said to be a pandemic emergency. So infectious diseases can spread over a larger area. Now, pandemic emergencies have include, for example, these following epidemics: Ebola, right? Ebola virus. So this is Zika, avian flu. These are all very recently we are hearing quite often these things: cholera, dengue fever, malaria, yellow fever, and COVID-19. So these are all referred to as, these are some of the examples for pandemic emergencies. It is a disaster. It is a biological disaster. It is a biological disaster. I think I have told you about these things. Natural disasters or the various things. Earthquakes, avalanches, droughts, deserts, epidemics of the diseases, and all these things are referred to as the natural disasters. Man-made disasters, conventional. Even collapse of building, drowning, explosion, right? Fires, all these things. So, vehicular disasters that may take place. So, chemicals including poisoning. So, these are all man-made disasters. Now, what are the factors that are going to affect the disaster? What are the host factors? It is the age of the community or the individual or the property or anything else like that. Age is one of the factors. For example, if you consider living, it is the age of the individual. If you consider the non-living entities, what is the age of that building? How many years old the building is, right? So then immunization status. What would be your immunity for responding to a particular pathogen or disease causing organism? Then your degree of mobility, to what extent you can grow, you can move around, or you can, right, move from place to place, or you can settle down, or nearby or far away, or a quick response. So what is the degree of your mobility? What is your capacity if any such disaster is going to take place, right, or going to not prone area? Then what is your degree of mobility? So emotional stability. So without becoming panic, how best you are going to control yourself to judiciously manage to cope up with the various disasters. If all of a sudden flooding takes place, so it is very difficult to have a stable mind. I know it, but still one once again there is a problem. Environment itself will alter. See, if you change the environment also will try to change you. So I don't know whether you might have heard one example of peppered moth, black peppered moth. It is scientifically, the name of this moth is called Biston betularia, and the variety is called Carbonaria. Now, just I will give you an example. Uh, After industrial revolution, so there is one moth called peppered moth, which was white in color, which used to grow on the trees or the barks of the trees. Okay. So now that was growing in population to a great extent. It never used to affect all these things. But after industrial revolution, the entire trees were covered with the black soot of the carbon. So that means carbon particulate matters got deposited on the barks and stems and branches of the trees. Now these white peppered moth, right, they started eating on the juices and barks of the plants. So they started ingesting these carbon particulate matter. Their body gradually started turning into the black colored one. Okay, but all the individuals cannot turn it into immediately. Now what happened was, when the entire tree was been occupied with a black colored soot, on which a white peppered moth, if at all, is moving or is existing, then the predators, the one which is going to catch and kill this moth, they used to easily catch hold of these white peppered ones. The white colored ones, because black and white are quite contrasting, on a black background, the white colored pepper moth was easily available to the sight of predators. They used to come and eat away. Like this, the population of the white peppered moth started declining. But the one which have been changed into black colored gradually by ingesting this carbon particulate matter, they escape. So that means if you change the environment also will change you. So that is what is the concept. 1 minute, the slide is once again the technical problem.
Excuse me, sir. You are muted. Sir, your mic is muted, sir.
Is it audible?
Yes, sir. Now audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now, what are the effects of disaster on human life? Physical effects. Physical injury inflicted upon human beings during a disaster is generally referred to as the physical effect. So, whenever any disaster has taken place, which part of the human beings are going to be affected, nobody can predict. So, there may be cuts, there may be wounds, there may be fractures, there may be breakages. So, all these things which you can see externally on the human body, you refer it to as the physical effect. Any physical injury that is inflicted externally on the human beings, which you can visualize, right? You can refer it as the physical effect. But another effect, mental or psychological effect. All of a sudden, you are seeing somebody's house is collapsing and it is nearer to your house or your neighbor, and you are also being what? Mentally nervous, isn't it? A mental trauma is going to be resulted, and your own kith and kin, if anybody is going to be affected because of the collapse of a partial of your building or a house or something else like that, or sometimes because of the fear. If a flood is occurring and start all of a sudden there is landslides, right? And those who especially who have traveled towards the north or northeastern side, so landslides are quite common. If you have taken this Chardham Yatra, like a trip to Rishikesh, Kedarnath, Badrinath, and something like that area. So even when you are traveling, you can see sometimes from a distance the landslide is taking place. So especially from Dehradun to Mussoorie and that area, if at all you are traveling, quite often such things you are not there. So you will be nervous, you will be mentally disordered, you will be panic, you will be having lot of fear. So any disaster that is going to, if at all resulted, and if any such feelings are going to develop in you, and even though you do not experience, looking at others, you may become highly what? Sort of, you will be developing an agony or a pain, etc. So you will be under stress. So that is nothing but the mental trauma or depression or the fear. So these are the psychological effects of a disaster. Okay. Now, economic effect. If you lose your house, if you lose your property, so if you lose your land, naturally you will be met with the financial loss. So that is said to be the economic effects of disasters. And social effects. Okay. Social effects of this disaster is that whenever a disaster has taken place, sometimes you may lose your kith and kin from that area. If all of a sudden landslide has taken place, or collapse of the buildings or houses have taken place, or flooding has taken place, sometimes the individuals of the same family may start getting what? Departed here and there, and they could not even trace out their family members. So when such events are going to be resulted, so you will be not only mentally affected, you lose your own kith and kin, etc. So that pain and panic is not easy one to be controlled, and you lose your what? People who are well wishers or you are there. So that means a social relationship is going to be broken down. So, and you may be shifted to some other place, right? So you may not be knowing the people. You will be once again there also. You will be having lot of fear. So social binding among the population of a locality is greatly affected. When you are living together, whether you like them or do not like them, somehow you will be what? Together in a given area. But if any disaster has taken place, when all of you get aparted or separated each other, so then when you lose your near ones, dear ones, so what would be your situation? So those effects, you call it as the social effects of the individuals. Now, on plants and animals also, the disasters, how it is going to affect. For example, the wildlife, human beings, they can express, they can cry, they can shout, they can seek their help. Immediately, a team may, as I told you, GOs or NGOs or local people or anybody may try to look into and may try to rescue you and try to help you. But what about the wild animals, right? Basically, we are scared of the wild animals themselves, but there are so many wildlife. Okay, so if these wildlife, whenever such disaster has takes place, so they get definitely destroyed, and because their place of living is going to be disturbed, they do not get food. Nobody is going to rehabilitate or recreate or do anything for this wildlife. They do not put any tent for this the wildlife. So when the habitat, the place of living of these wildlife are going to be lost, so the endangered species become more vulnerable. That is, the species with lesser population who are on the brink of extinction from this globe, so they will be more vulnerable. They are becoming more vulnerable to become extinct. So that may be the situation. And whenever disaster takes place, whether it is in the wells, ponds, and other water bodies, the water quality is greatly affected. Even the sewage treatment plants, whenever it is going to be flooded, the sediments may reach the rivers and other waterways. So you may not get a good drinking water. So somebody was asking me, when flooding has taken place in Kerala, oh, plenty of water is available for them to drink. They will not be having any shortage of water. It is not so. So whenever flooding takes place, there will be the intrusion of all possible types of pollutants, debris, etc., so that the drinking water becomes a shortage. Scarcity of these drinking water will be there in such even flooded areas. So because of as I told you, because of many factors. So that will be another way of having, we can see the disaster. And every year, natural disasters such as hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, etc., they are all affecting the agricultural productivity. So, if the productivity, we know that the economy of our country is basically built upon the agricultural productivity. One of the major reasons for the economic status, economic progress of the country is the protection or capital of the biodiversity, capital of your crop resources, capital of your mineral resources. These are the backbones for the economy of the country. So whenever a disaster has taken place, right, naturally the agricultural productivity is going to be affected. See, for example, recently, even in Karnataka, we have seen towards North Karnataka, when flooding has taken place, there is loss of damage to the crops. Until and unless the compensation has been given to the local farmers, what about their life? What about their family? What about their population? And how to make once again to get engaged with agricultural activities? How the moral, economic, and social support that has to be given. So these are all the things that has to be taught. So that is how whenever a disaster has taken place, it is primarily going to affect the agricultural productivity also, wherever the areas has been under cultivation. So excessive flooding, excessive rainfall, or excessive drought condition, look at, they are called climatic disasters. Because of the climatic disasters, the productivity also is going to be affected. So one such disaster that we can cite is about the global warming and climate change. Global warming and climate change is also going to affect the productivity. So every individual, whether it is plant, animal, or human beings, require an optimum temperature for carrying out their metabolic activity. For example, please somebody don't discuss. Huh? So when an alteration in the temperature is going to take, say for example, your body temperature is 98.4 degree Fahrenheit. Sir, please, whoever is talking, please stop your talk. It is being recorded here. Okay. Fine. Shall I close here? You can continue with your discussion. Now you may think that we can note down as to who is that disturbing factor. Huh? I will ask them. They will if they notice it, they will remove. Okay. Fine. Even any alteration in the temperature, above the optimum or below the optimum is going to affect an individual. Say, for example, in your case, in human beings, if your body temperature is 98.4 degree Fahrenheit, if there is slightly 1 degree increase in temperature or 1 degree decrease in temperature, what will happen? If there is an increase, you feel that you are fever, you are having fever, you are feverish, you cannot work normally. If the temperature decrease, you cannot work normally. Same is the case with every animals, every plant. Every plant, even for synthesis of the food, photosynthesis has to take place. There should be an optimum temperature. There should be an optimum water conditions, rainfall. So likewise, for all your activities in life, you need an optimum temperature, water, etc., nutrients. But if that is going to be altered due to disasters, excessive flooding, right, they may leach out sometimes the fertile soil in an agricultural land. They may erode the top fertile soil, rendering it unfertile. So likewise, agricultural productivity is going to be greatly affected. So, and not only that, many agricultural assets and infrastructure may also get damaged. Even agricultural assets, whatever that is requirement for your agriculture, whether it is plowing or a machinery or a grain cleaning or a grain dressing or sowing seeds machine, all these things may be affected. So, in other words, when agricultural related activities or materials are going to be affected, so the food security will be lost. The food security for the survival of the human population will be lost. So if you want to see that the agricultural productivity should be protected, enhanced, etc. So to the greater extent, safety measures even before the occurrence of disaster, during or after. So measures should be properly taken. It should be planned, and to mitigate any such measures, you should have a judicious program to meet any such eventualities. Now, damage, for example, may occur in flooded soil. So what happens when flooding completely takes place? So there will be decrease in oxygen, depletion of oxygen. Crops require more and more oxygen for their normal activity, for their normal growth and development. If water becomes clogged in all these things, they block all the areas and the pores that through which the plant is to take up the oxygen, then automatically there will be no productivity. Okay, so then naturally the yield will be decreased. Yield will be decreased. Now, added to that, sometimes the plant diseases may also be resulted. So continuous flooding may also give support to the growth of such type of organisms which may cause diseases. So on one hand, there is depletion of oxygen. On the other hand, there will be the incidence of the diseases. With these two, the cumulative effect is that there will be a decrease in the yield of the crop plants. So that will be the impact of disaster. Now, on the land surface, we know it. When roads and other things, transportation become very, very difficult. When natural calamities like floods and high wind velocities or earthquakes takes place, so from one region to another region, you cannot have transportation. So in one and the same area, you do not get all the resources, including food resources. You are interdependent for many resources from many regions. If one region is going to be affected, and if another region is not going to be have a communication with that one, naturally it is going to affect the entire people and the entire life in that area. Now, pollution of various kinds and release of toxic substances. If such type of water body or the waste that is going to be generated, and if they get into the drinking water, right? So what would be the status of the people? So, and see, a clean air for breathing, then automatically it will be a disaster. Today, probably you might have been hearing in the news that many times in Delhi, the transportation of the vehicle, isn't it? The vehicular movement will be stopped. They allow at least 2-3 days in a week, they are going to stop it because of the atmospheric pollution. It is very difficult to breathe in. So many respiratory diseases in, right, not in one or two individuals, in thousands and thousands of individuals are going to be resulted. So that is how such type of things has to be prevented. Soil erosion and loss of soil nutrients. When flooding has taken place, and after some period of time, it will dry up. Now there will be no topsoil is removed, and the topsoil is removed, and there is deforestation, and if there is no plants to bind the soil particles, the entire area becomes barren land, a desertification. It becomes like a desert. So without the presence of soil nutrients and fertile soil, you cannot grow any crop in such type of areas. So according to Tata Energy Research Institute, every year 5,300 million tons of fertile soil is eroded in India. Every year 5,300 million tons of fertile soil is eroded in India. You just imagine how much of land is rendering unfit for cultivation because of such type of disasters. Right. Now, some of the examples, if I want to show you, the deadliest natural disasters in India, one such is Kashmir floods disaster in 2014. And I am displaying here what are the affected areas and what will be the number of deaths. 550 plus deaths have been resulted. The flood has caused a huge loss of the life in Kashmir region in September. It is because of the flooding of the Jhelum River, which is in Srinagar, right? So Kashmir. So that is what is one of the deadliest natural disaster. And in Uttarakhand flash floods in 2013, more than 5,700 plus people were died. So it is mainly because of massive landslides and heavy rainfall. That is what I told you. If you are traveling from Dehradun or Uttarakhand, any towards Chardham Yatra, Kedarnath or Badrinath or Mussoorie, you will see quite often, you can see that landslides will be taking place. And if sudden massive landslides have taken place coupled with heavy rainfall, naturally it will take away the loss of the people in that vicinity. Now, Indian Ocean Tsunami 2004, we know that how tsunami has resulted. The number of deaths were officially recorded. Number of deaths was 2.30 lakhs. 2.3 lakh people were died. So just imagine how it has going to be resulted. Gujarat earthquake in 2001, it has taken, the number of deaths were around 20,000, injured more than 1.5 lakh people, and more than 4 lakh people became homeless due to the earthquake. These are all some of the examples of disasters in India. Now, what are the solutions to disaster problems? What can we do? Right. So that is where the disaster management will peep in. This disaster management, how to manage this disaster, etc., was actually in our legislation enacted as Disaster Management Act of 2005. Now, what according to this act? So, disaster management should have an integration of proper planning, organizing, coordinating, and implementing measures which are necessary for preventing the disaster. Risk, how to manage the risk of any disaster or its consequences, and how to deal with this disaster. So, our Disaster Management Act of 2005 in India clearly, beautifully, it is going to give the protocol. It integrates, right, how this process of planning, organizing, coordinating, and implementing measure should be taken to prevent any disaster, or by chance if disaster has taken place, how to reduce the risk of any disaster or its consequences in any area, and by chance if at all it has taken place, how to deal with this disaster in any area. So that is what is called disaster management. In other words, disaster management aims at properly dealing with a disaster, assessment of the severity of the effects of any disaster. So, what would be the severe conditions or the effects that we can see it when a disaster has taken place, and rescue and relief measures that should be adopted during a disaster, and after disaster has taken place, what are the rehabilitation and reconstruction program that has to be adopted. So that is what is the disaster management is aimed at. Okay. Now, what are the various phases of disaster management? Very precisely, very briefly, I can tell you. So, there are various stages or phases of disaster management: mitigation, preparedness, prevention, rehabilitation, response, and recovery. In one sentence, if I say what is the meaning of all these things, preparedness. That means any activity prior to a disaster, you, right, before you know that this is the area which is more prone for disaster. Now, how you prepare yourself? So, if suppose disaster is going to take place, suppose an earthquake or a volcano or something flooding is took place. So, how I should plan it to inform to the authorities, to the people, how to warn it. You know it, whenever there is a hurricane or cyclone, so through radio and television, they are going to announce it according to meteorological department. So cyclone is moving from this area to that area, this direction to that direction. Fishermen should not get into what? Fishing activities. They give the signal. That is called preparedness. That is called preparedness for a disaster. Then activities that you carry out during a disaster, public warning system, any emergency operation, what are the rescue operation that you are going to do during a disaster? That is nothing but your response during a disaster. So that is also involved in disaster management. Recovery, activities following a disaster. That is, when a disaster has taken place, how immediately you can accommodate the population in schools, tents, etc., in ashramas, at many places. You will make temporary housing, isn't it? Then you will make food arrangements for them. See, basic amenities like food, water, sanitation. So all these temporary accommodation you are going to make it, and you will give medical attention also. So that is nothing but the activities following a disaster is nothing but the recovery. Then mitigation. So mitigation is nothing but the activities that reduce the effects of disaster. Effects of disaster. How you can reduce the effects of this disaster. So for that, how do you educate the public? I mean the people. How do you analyze the vulnerability? So that is how there are various phases. Preparedness, the knowledge and capacity developed by the government through various organizations. Prevention, how to avoid the adverse impacts of hazards and related disasters. Response, so what is the emergency service and public assistance that you can offer to during or after disaster to protect the life of the human beings, to reduce the health impacts. So all these things you are going to respond to the individual. That is also one of the steps in disaster management: preparedness, prevention, response or relief measures, right? And a coordinated multi-agency response ultimately. So rescue, relocation, provision of water and food, provision of emergency health care, then prevention of disease and disability. This is very, very important. See that when our people are moving from or displaced from one area to another area, there may be many deceased people. To see that infectious diseases should not be spread from one population to another population, one individual to another individual. Then if there is no electricity, if there is no power supply, no communication devices, so how to re-establish these devices? So that is repairing vital services. Then transportation, carrying the people or population from one area to another area to a safer zone, and provision of temporary shelter. So all these activities should be coordinated, and it is not by single agency. One individual cannot do it. So there should be the involvement of the government organizations, non-government organizations, voluntary organizations, right, and in individual capacities, right? So in all these things, you can think of managing or meeting with the disasters, and you should try to recover. Once the disaster has taken place, after some period of time, you should know how to rebuild the schools, hospitals, homes, roads for the people of that area, and what are the healthcare that one should take care of. So all these things, and there should be, of course, development of proper policies and practices to avoid or mitigate similar situations in future. In future, if anything happens, how to see that it should be managed to be dealt with. So all these policies and practices programs should be also inculcated. So that is the effect. And mitigation. Mitigation is nothing but ultimately how to reduce the loss of life and property. How to reduce the loss of life and property by the impact of disasters. So mitigation is taking action now before the next disaster and to reduce human and financial consequences. In other words, you should analyze. Suppose a disaster has taken place, how much of loss of human life has taken place, and to meet that recovery and other things, settlement, rehabilitation, etc., what is the expenditure that is involved, and to see that all basic communities once again should be provided to them. So what is the expenditure? So all these financial support, social status, rehabilitation, everything should be managed for the affected area, and in future also you should have a plan as to how to meet these things. That is what is called what we can say a disaster management fund also will be there. So how much to use the fund and how much to be spent. So proper distribution of all these things is very much essential in management of the disaster. So thank you all for your patient listening. I am just giving you just the basic peanuts of the concept of disaster management. Each and every aspect can be dealt in hours together, just have given you the glimpse of this disaster management. So if you have got anything to be asked, you are at most welcome. And once again, I thank you one and all for your patient listening. So if you have got anything, please interact. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. So just I wanted to tell you what is the meaning of disaster, what are the types of disaster that takes place, what would be the effects of disaster that takes place, and how one should prepare themselves for disaster, and what is the act that is mentioned there, and what are the steps that are involved in this disaster management. So to analyze preparedness, mitigation, right? And the rules and regulations related to each and every aspects. So that itself take hours together. Just everything I wanted to give you in a nutshell about this concept of disaster management. That's all. Yes? Anything is there? Either you have understood or you have not understood anything. Huh? Okay. Okay, dear teacher friends, if there are no questions, let me wind up that. Huh? Thank you one and all for all your patience.
1 minute, sir. I will give you the vote of thanks.
Yes, please.
Sir, your session was really wonderful, and you explained the things very simple. And on behalf of the short-term course participants and MMTTC staff, I would like to thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
One and all.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you one and all. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Stop ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. No, they are trying to ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ
ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸರ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ.
Huh?
Participants, please join at 1:50.
Hello, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, this is Dr. Surekha N, Government Home Science College, Hassan. Ma'am, ಇದು ಲಿಂಕ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್? ಬೇರೆ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಲಿಂಕ್ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಒಂದು ಇದ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ನೋಡಿ.
ನನ್ನ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಅದು ನಾವು ಏನ್ ನೀವು ನಂಬರ್
ನೀವು ಲೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಆದ್ರಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಲೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನೀವು ಏನೋ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಐಡಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು.
ಹೌದು ಹೌದು ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ನಂದು 057.
ಹಳೆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಏನು ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ.
ಹೌದೌದು, ನಂಗೆ ಟೈಮ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಏನು ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.